more and I'm chasing after you. Hey, 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 hey. I'm praising my way through. Hey, 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 hey. Just to be closer to you. Hey, 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 hey. I'm chasing after you. Help me say, I'm chasing after you. I'm praising my way through just to be closer to you. Hey, I'm chasing after you. Say more and more, more and more, more and more, more and more. More and more, more and more, more and more. Hey, take it. I'm chasing after you. I'm chasing after you. I'm chasing after you. I'm chasing. Say more and more, 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 more and more. Gotta have more, more and more, more and more, more and more, more and more. Let's go. I'm chasing after you. Hey, 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 hey. I'm praising my way through. Hey, hey, hey. Just to be closer to you. Hey, 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 hey. I'm chasing after you. Say I'm chasing after you. Hey, I'm praising my way through just to be closer to you. I'm chasing after you. Say more and more, 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 more and more.
God, we love you and we thank you for just being able to chase after you. We give you glory for what you're doing and how you're doing it. Continue, God, to be God in our lives. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Let the church say amen. Wait, I'll take a moment to say amen again.
Amen. Again.
Again. And again and again. I love that. Good evening, everyone. This is the day that the Lord has made. We have the amazing opportunity to rejoice and be glad about it. Throughout the month of June, we were sharing a series of kind of panel discussions. We kicked off the month talking about dads and daughters, fathering or raising daughters in this time, and the fact that our daughters see us, and so much of who our daughters become depends on how we have related to them and raised them as fathers. And absentee fatherism is a pandemic, if you will, especially in these United States, but in particular in the black community. And so we talked about that and just how we ought to father and raise our daughters. But then we had a panel with law enforcement. We had our chief of police for Red Oak, the spokesperson for the Dallas Police Department. We had our mayor, and we shared with another local pastor, Pastor Douglas. And so throughout those discussions, we asked some very pointed questions about interactions with law enforcement, but also policies, procedures, and hiring practices of what that looks like. And of course, on last Tuesday, we were going to have this discussion that we're going to have tonight. But we decided that in light of what has happened in our community with a local business owner who completely disrespected our community, we decided to protest on last week instead. And so really we protested, but we marched and we really prayed. His business is shut down. He is no longer in business. And this was a very high dollar business. And so we thank God for what a peaceful protest can accomplish. And so we're very proud. Thank you to everyone who came out on last week, and for all of those who marched the days and even the week leading up to who really did the work, who really did really did the shutting down of the business. And so we thank God for each and every one of you. But tonight I want to discuss raising sons in this time. Just like our daughters watch us, just like our daughters see us, so do our sons. And I'm mighty afraid that in this day and age, we are raising young men who are growing up to be grown men with still young men mentality. It's one thing to grow up, or to grow old and never grow up. So it is possible, it is possible to grow old and never grow up. And it's even worse to be considered an old fool. And so tonight, I have a few of our brothers who are going to join us, and one of our young men, one of our young men going to join us. I want to talk tonight. I want to kind of schedule tonight's discussion around being raised in this day and age. Being raised, one, in a pandemic with COVID-19, but it's another thing to be raised in this pandemic of fatherlessness. This thing that has plagued too many of our young people, especially in the black community. And so tonight, my first panelist is Reverend Curtis Pruitt. Curtis Pruitt has a son he's raised successfully, a son who is still navigating the latter part of his teenage years. And so I'd love to hear and draw on his experience. So I'm going to ask Reverend Curtis Pruitt to come this way. I also have Reverend Keith Powell, who is who's raised both a son and a daughter, who's navigating the teenage years as well. Reverend Powell is one of our brothers who works with our men here as well at Faith Fellowship, and so he's joining us here. I want to invite another young man, Kayvon, who can share a perspective of a unique perspective of having a father or not having a father, should I say. And so I want him to come, and I want him to share. He's going to bring a unique perspective. In fact, I call him my son, and I'm proud to call him my son. And so he's going to come tonight. But also, we have a young man who is doing some amazing things in the community. He's doing some amazing things in school, and he's young. But he's a part of the youth council for the city of Dallas, and so he's going to come. Mr. Elijah Burrell is going to make his way up, And I thank God for him. I'm so proud of so many of our young men and the amazing things that they're doing. And so, Elijah, why don't you come sit right here? Come sit, kind of balance us out right here. And thank God for each and every one of you. You just going to have to hand me my water when I need it. All right? Yeah, I'll put that down there. If I start sweating up here, I need you to hand me my towel too. All right? And so we thank God. We thank God for these who are here. And I have one or two other brothers in the crowd that I might call on as we kind of progress throughout our conversation tonight. And I thank God for the handful of ladies that we have here tonight, because as we go and as we engage, and I want to make sure that we have a microphone, because I love for those of you who are watching online, if you have questions, feel free to type those questions, on the screen, and they'll put them on here, and we'll try our best to get your questions answered. All right. And so that's how the night will go. Again, if you have questions, simply type them on the screen. They'll relay them to us. They'll do the best they can, and I will do our best we can to get those questions answered. I want us to start over here. Please take a moment, introduce yourself. Just talk about who you are, your age, your father's situation. Talk about the relationship that you have, or that you have with your father, or didn't have, or have with your father, and we'll come back to that. But just talk about that perspective right now, because we'll let questions kind of ensue from there. All right, so we'll start here, and we'll come this way. Make sure you put your mics on.
All right, so my name is Kayvon Lee. I'm 25 years old. I pretty much grew up without a father. So times like this, I heard about police brutality. I heard about stuff like this all growing up. So it's not too much of a shock to me, but it does make me have a different perspective, as now I'm in the real line of fire when it comes to a lot of the police brutality, and when it comes to me being able to protest, and me just being older. So I'm exposed to a whole different world.
Yeah.
Amen. My name's Keith Powell, as Pastor said. I'm 49, originally from Chicago, where did grow up most of my life with my dad. Part of it, I grew up with my mom. He came back into my life when I was 4 or 5, somewhere in there. We had somewhat of a strained relationship, but he was always there for me in my life. He worked a lot, trying to raise, 7, 8 kids. So, being out in the streets, I had to learn to navigate that with the advice he gave me, and in the same sense, dealing with the pressures of bumping heads with the police and those things. So, like Kayvon was saying, this really is, this situation that's going on in the country isn't new. It's just something that's coming to a head.
Elisha?
My name is Elijah Burrell, and growing up, I'm gonna be honest, I really never really knew my father exactly, but in a sense of I've had other people that have kind of been there for me and have kind of helped me grow. So in a sense, they kind of taken his place, and I've had like lots of father figures, that growing up have taught me, like how to deal with the police and everything with police brutality going on.
My name is Curtis Pruitt. I grew up here in Dallas, Texas. I am 46 now, and I was actually blessed to grow up with both parents in a household.
Awesome.
And, I came on the tail end of a military. I wasn't quite the military brat because he retired when I was real young, but those military instincts were still kind of there as I was growing up. And I'm truly blessed. And my dad was not just a dad to me, but he was also a dad to other kids in the neighborhood, as well as their dads being kids to me. So I not only had my father, but I had my friends' fathers also as a father figure to myself.
That's awesome. All right, so thank y'all for taking a moment to introduce yourselves. So let's just talk about raising sons. You two are raising sons. Obviously, you two are sons. One of the things that you mentioned, Keith, you talked about my dad worked a lot. You know, most of the time, men hang their hats on being providers. Like that's what most men are taught. That's what manhood is. Your provision. But there's so much more to fatherhood than provision, especially in this day and age. And so, raising a son, first of all, how did that affect you? Briefly, how did that affect you? You know, coming up with a dad who maybe wasn't there early, but otherwise was there for the majority of your life, but worked a lot. So, you know, there was obviously limited time. How did that affect you? And then how does that affect you in the time that you try to invest in your son?
Well, the immediate way that it affected me was a lot of things I had to figure out on my own. Like I knew that a man worked. I knew that you had to display good work ethic. I knew that you needed finances to take care of your kids, but I never knew. He didn't have time to pour a lot of the emotional content into it, of how to handle relationships or how to there's a lot of things that I had to figure out how to navigate really what a man is, because there's so much more layers to it than that. So for me, when I became a dad, first couple of years was rough because I was going by that model. But as I saw how those things affected my son as well as my daughter, I had to figure out a different way. Yeah. So I learned that you have to have a balance between being a provider as well as being, you know, a leader for your household, a leader for your son. He's got to see that as well as the other things. So I had to learn how to pour into him emotionally and as well as other things.
Did your dad tell you he loved you?
Oh, all the time. You know, it was never a fact of, I didn't live in a loveless house. It just wasn't enough time to do it all, you know, if that makes sense.
You say you didn't live in a loveless house. A lot of people don't live per se in loveless houses, but I think that sometimes the way that people express love is differently. You know, sometimes a man can think that because you got a roof over your head and you got food on your table, you got them expensive tennis shoes, you know, even if whether I say it or not, you ought to feel it. Right. You know, you ought to know I love you. And that's that. So that father would say, my house was filled with love because it was a house. And it had warm, you know, heat in the cold and, you know, cool, air conditioning in the summer. It had, you know, I loved you. I kept you, you know, you looked, that you were embarrassed in front of your friends.
And that was one of the things that I had to navigate away from is, you know, if the light's on, you flick the light switch. Okay, I love you. To, hey, man, when I see you, I not only say that I love you, but I show you that I love you. Because, you know, like you said, so much more to it than just the bills, man, you know.
Yeah, awesome. Coming up in a two-parent household, so did I. I mean, I was so blessed. I had both my parents. They're still living. You know, they're still married. That's an anomaly in this day and age. Like that's just parents. You know, people don't have two parents that they grew up and see in the same house. You know, all of their lives. I mean that. And my parents became parents to so many of my friends. You said your father or your father was military? Yeah. Dad was military. How did, tell me, how was your childhood coming up? Was it, speak for the military brats around the world, you know, that call themselves that. I hope that's not offensive that I call them military brats. They call themselves, they label themselves that. But in terms of coming up in a house with a father who was in the military, did you find that hard or difficult? And secondly, did you find yourself doing some of the things that he did with your son?
Yes and no. I'm going to start the military part.
Right.
I never really considered myself a military brat because unlike my brothers and sisters, they got to travel around the world with them. So because I caught the tail end, by the time I came into really, he had retired.
You was a love baby.
Right, but what happened is most people who are in the military know that when your kids act up, it costs you money. It costs you stripes. So him having that mentality. Like,
I didn't know that.
Yes, so like if say for instance, I had a brother who did the most. And there were times where he'd be like, look, I'm sending you and your mama to the States. You know, it came down to those type of things. So you had to really be on your kids. And this is, we're talking about the 70s and 60s. I don't know how it is now. And so just the structure that he had in the household, you know, and my mom enforced some of that too. You got to keep stuff clean. You got to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Or if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there's consequences. Yeah. So it was that type of environment growing up. But also, my brother and sister felt like I got away with murder. Obviously, I was youngest child too, so
Yeah.
they felt like I got away with murder. And I was like, well, you had young parents, and my parents are old, so then they had the energy to run after me, like them. So.
Right. That's awesome. Okay, so now Elijah, now you said you grew up, without a father in your life, but you have become an incredible young man. You have an amazing mom who has, who's raised what we believe to be a very, very fine young man. So tell me how did you overcome that? Like people say that without a father you're not supposed to be there. Statistically, you have disadvantages, and it is statistically true. But how have you proven all of those statistics wrong? You're involved. You're in Dallas City Council. You're a leader. You're a spokesperson for your people your age. Tell people how old you are again, and some of the. Go ahead and brag on yourself. I want you to brag on yourself. Tell us some of your accomplishments, and then tell us how you overcame to reach some of those accomplishments.
Well, starting off, I'm 16, and the way that I came to do all these accomplishments, like for example, I'm with the Youth Commission, and we recently made a video on Black Lives Matter and what has happened to George Floyd. And then, of course, there's been where I've given thank you notes to police officers and everything.
How many thank you notes have you passed out?
I've passed out quite a bit. I've passed out at least 40.
It's way more than 40 at my last count. But yes, I think that's awesome that he hand wrote notes to police officers, and his mom, and they drove around to find police officers to hand these notes to. Anyway, go ahead. How have you overcome those odds?
And the way I've overcome those,
Yes.
I've proved that even though, for anybody that doesn't really have a father necessarily, it's all about self-guidance. There's a way that you can guide yourself to kind of you can learn proactiveness. You can learn how to guide yourself to do, what you need to do.
What does that mean?
Proactiveness, guiding yourself. For example, just because you don't have, like I said, if you don't have a father, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily all alone.
That's right.
Because you have all these other people. As long as you have other people around you and you're in a good situation, a good environment or anything like that,
Yeah.
and you have these people that support you and can teach you different things that, your father probably never has. And even if you don't have a father, there's still people that act like father figures to you, or that are like a second father to you.
Who are those people for you?
For me, it has to be just about everybody at this church, every man at this church. I have to say, they've really done well with, teaching me, being a man and everything. And it's been great so far. I see everybody here, every man here has a father figure, necessarily, like a second father.
That's awesome. Is there any, who are your role models?
My role models, in general, it probably has to be my grandmother.
Okay.
Because she's really she's been there for me. She's helped me through everything, and she's just always been there for me.
Grandmothers are amazing. Any
Yes.
other role models?
I have lots of.
Who are your male role models?
My male role models. My male role models are, in the sense of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Or Malcolm X.
All right.
Because it's the
By
fact
any
that
means necessary.
it's the fact that they have necessarily dealing with Black Lives Matter and everything. They have different ways of achieving the same goal.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, different methods, same goal in mind. Dr. King wanted to do it peacefully. Malcolm said by any means necessary. We're going to get this thing done. I love it. So let's talk about this thing. You said you had to figure manhood out. All right, you had to figure manhood out. I think that there's a level of figuring this thing out that all of us have to do. So, Kayvon, you're 25 years old. You talk about, you say you didn't really grow up with a father in your life. But at such a young age, you became, can I say, successful, meaning that you took responsibility. You went to college. You started your own business. You have your own photography business. You have your own side hustles. I'll say that. You have your own side hustles. You're active in church, that kind of thing. You're in MIT. So tell me, how did you figure it out?
Honestly, it was just a lot of trial and error with life. You can do things and if it don't turn out good, you know not to do it again. Uh, and if it turns out good, you keep doing it until something better comes along.
Okay.
But I know specifically in my life, I just, when you had nothing, when you get something, you feel like you have nothing to lose. So you just have to I just keep working. I don't look back. I don't look down. I just keep working as a man.
So, has not having a father in your life, how did that affect you? I mean, if at all. I mean, obviously you're doing your thing, but coming up mentally, did it affect you? I know now you're at a point, where you have other father figures, but at some point in time, did that bother you not to be able to have to say, I came up without a father? Obviously, you have an amazing mom, who's done all that she could do, as best she can as a woman to raise a son. But did it make you feel a certain type of way coming up having to say, I grew up without a father? That mentally, how does that affect you mentally?
When I was younger, it affected me a little bit more than it does now, because my friends had two parents. I went to DeSoto High School, so it was a good district. When I played football, I would see dads, I would see moms, I would see the whole family. I would get to know people's families, but it just made me grind harder to get to a point where when I got older, whenever I had kids, that I would just want to be there for my kids. So the not having a father just made me work harder.
One of the things I can say, and I credit to a lot of the the hip hop industry, Diddy and so many others who, while being a poor father or an absentee father, was acceptable in a lot of hip hop. But those guys came along and they changed that. The images that they're taking pictures with their kids, of taking family pictures and bringing their entire families to, the BET Awards and all those kinds of things. They really changed the image of fatherhood, and of course, because coming up, all we had, at the time was the Cosby Show, right? That was the ultimate family. Obviously, we know that's television, but I mean, for us, it was imagery. It was what we needed to see. It was that we needed to know that we could become successful. We could be doctors and lawyers, and we could have families. And so, what about this? What about the emotional? Because here's what I want to get to. Did you ever get angry? Elijah, are you ever angry at the fact that your father wasn't there? And because we've all had to make some adjustments, even those of us who grew up with fathers in our homes, all right? Because even that's not easy. My dad was hard. He was strict. He was a disciplinarian. You messed up. Both my parents were. Wherever you acted up, that's where you got dealt with. They didn't. They were parents who didn't play. But did you ever? Was there ever a point where you got angry, where you felt, frustrated, that you felt abandoned, or did you? What kind of emotion? Explain to me your emotion that you possibly felt or dealt with not having a father present there. I don't care who goes first. All right, you're going 25. You're going to put on a 16-year-old. 16-year-old, go ahead, Elijah. Talk to us. Did you ever feel angry? Do you ever feel like you've lost something in life, like you're missing something?
I have felt like, I wouldn't say necessarily angry, but like confused in a way, as in like, it's just like, why would you kind of just like leave? But then again, every time you lose something, you kind of gain something. And I felt like if I lost my father, but I've gained so many other people.
Yeah.
Like,
that's good. That's good. That's why you're on this panel. Now go ahead on 25-year-old. Top that. Top that.
All right. So since I got to top it, I guess life emotionally, it's like a song that I think Lil Baby just made called "Emotionally Scarred." He says in the song, "I'm tired of being tired of being tired." And as a kid, growing up like poor, whenever you're tired of being tired, it pushes you and motivates you. So emotions go out the window. When I was a kid, my emotions went out the window. So I was literally in a mode to where I have to get out of where I am, and wherever I go, it just has to be better. So I was tired of being tired.
I understand. All right, so that's good. Listen, don't forget that you can, if you have questions, don't forget you can type those questions in, and we'll be sure to try our very best to answer these questions. And if you want to ask somebody specifically, be sure to identify that as well. All right, so Keith, Reverend Powell, raising a son, raising a daughter in this day and age. Most of us, in light of all, I know it's a sure justice for George Floyd. When you see the likes of a Trayvon Martin, and so many other countless young men who are being killed unjustly, unarmed, just usually coming out of a convenience store, usually just minding their business. You know what I mean? You know, Michael Brown, just because he was tall. You know, just because, I mean, they saw him as a monster. Do you fear for your son? You know, do you fear for your son? And I want you to answer the same thing. You're raising teenage sons, and then I'll come back and talk about the talk that we have to have. How do you feel?
Oh, absolutely, and more so now. You know, when you're talking about, you know, the Trayvon Martins and, you know, the other African American men that were unjustly killed.
Yes.
Those were more, my son Dylan was younger then. So my concern was, of course, a little bit of fear, but the thought process was, how do I teach him to navigate through this? But now he's 16, he's a young man. You know, if you see him on the street, you might actually mistake him for a grown man. So now my fear is, do I let my son go outside? Or when he's outside, how, you know, what can happen to him? Example, the other day on the 4th, his friend lives in the neighborhood, called him over, you know, hey man, we're gonna pop some fireworks. Why don't you come over, it's dark outside. You know, I was a little hesitant. But I said, okay, go. Dylan, man, be careful, watch what you're doing, take your headphones out, take your hoodie off. Be aware of your surroundings. He leaves. We're sitting in the backyard, and I see a squad car come in the neighborhood, turn the corner. Immediately, panic, fear. What can happen to my son? And I called my son, and I told my son to come home from the neighborhood that he lives in, that he should be able to roam freely in, and then go out and enjoy, you know, the 4th of July. I feel like he can't.
Yeah.
You know, so I got, you know, that's what we're dealing with.
That's the time in which we live. I mean, you know? and Trayvon was killing his own gated community.
Yeah, exactly.
Gated community.
Yeah.
I get it. So Reverend Pruitt, you know, the same thing. You have a son. Your son is tall. I mean, you know, he's a big fellow. You know, athlete, built athletically. You know, in this day and age, how does that make you feel? Raising a son, you know, do you fear for him? You know,
Of course, I still fear for myself sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think it has really hit me now that he's starting to drive. Because I think about how much that happens, you know, with traffic incidents.
Yeah.
And so one day, and it just hit me hard recently, because I was thinking about, when you teach him how to drive, you say you want to make sure that he don't run into any other cars, or you try to warn him about all the traffic stuff that they have to worry about. And then it's like, now I have to have the talk. So now we're having to talk. If you happen to get stopped by the police, make sure you always keep your hands up. Don't do anything sudden, because they may be already afraid of you when they stop you. And so anything that you do may cause them to do something to you out of their fear, because a lot of times they don't know you. You know, they don't know you from any other kid. And like you were saying, he has size. He's the same size as me almost. And so you try to have that talk so they won't do anything that cause harm to themselves. But sometimes that don't even matter. And so, of course, it's one of those things that you get real spiritual and you have to really put in the hands of God. But you want to teach them, don't do nothing that's going to bring harm to yourself, because they are already almost sometimes looking for a reason.
Right. Black families have had to have 2 talks. Most people don't know this. Black families have always had to have at least 2 talks with their children. All right. The first talk that they have to have is when we go in this store. Don't you ask for nothing. Don't touch nothing. Don't look at nothing. Don't think about nothing. And you just push this basket. And if you push this basket and you hit my ankles, I'm going to kill you. Like, that's the first talk that every black parent has to have with their kids. Unfortunately, now we've had to add a second talk, which is, listen, you know, and it's last week or a week before last, when I asked our mayor this question, and I asked him, I said, have you ever had to have the talk with your son? Have you ever had to have, or and I asked Jared, have you ever had to tell your daughters, you don't fear that when your daughters are stopped by the police that they have to, they see the police as their friends. So if they're ever stopped, it's like, hey, officer, what's going on? It can be that kind of interaction. Whereas if I'm stopped or if a young man is stopped, it's not that friendly stop. It's not that friendly banter. It is and what amazed me is Officer Warren Mitchell, who's the spokesperson for the Dallas Police Department and of 32 years. He talks about when even now, he says, if he stopped now, how he goes into a panic. And he's 32 years police, sergeant, made it through the ranks, and he sweats, he gets nervous, and he gets anxious, and he does, and he begins to shake, and he is law enforcement. He has a badge that he can whip out and can get perhaps a professional courtesy. And so for us, when we're raising our sons, when we're trying to tell them that when you're stopped by the police, we have to express to them, how important it is to like you say, don't move suddenly, because they'll take. Whereas some little white girl, can move and go in her purse and be digging out. My license is in here somewhere, whereas we can't dig at anything. We have to say, listen, my license, is in my wallet. My wallet is in my pants. How do you want me to get it? Like, we have to, it becomes this thing that it shouldn't have to be.
I want to say something else.
Yeah.
I remember even when I was growing up, when there was an issue at school, my parents always tell me, don't ever disrespect the teacher. If you think that something is not right, you bring it home to me and let me fight that fight for you. And it's almost like the same thing. Don't argue with them, just make it home. And if anything else happens, we'll go deal with it, the legal way. Yeah. The problem is you just want them to just make it home. Right. And then we'll go fight the fight through the system.
Right. And that's one of the things that both officers said, just get home. Like, whatever they ask you to get out of the car, get out. Don't say, no, what do you tell, why I got to get out of the car? What did I do? I didn't do nothing. Don't, all that argumentative banter, you're just escalating the situation. If they ask you to get out of the car, one of the things we said is just get out of the car. If you missed it, I asked some very pointed questions because, many of us, cell phones have become both the best friend and enemy of police officers. They've been the best friend because so many people whip their cell phones out and they think they're recording something that is in the favor of the person who might be being detained, and they're jerking their arms away saying, I know my rights, you can't touch me, you got to tell me what I'm being detained for. And we had the chief of police and the spokesperson for the Dallas police who said, no, that's not true, that it is not true. They do have to tell you, but they don't have to tell you before they put the cuffs on you. And so you can be cuffed, and then they can tell you, you can argue, you can talk about it later, but all that, because at the moment that you start jerking your arm away and I know my rights, you just got on film that you're resisting. That is literally called resisting arrest, and you've given them permission to use whatever force that they need, that they feel necessary. So if they do slam you on the ground or put you, they seem like it's a little bit rough. Well, once they say stop resisting, at that point in time, you have given them with your actions. And this is important for us to know. This is important for us to know because you will lose this battle every time. That's why you see this stuff online and then you never hear anything else about it because they're wrong. They say they know their rights, but they actually don't. But please do study so you can fully understand your rights, especially those of you and those of us who carry firearms. You must know all of your rights. You got to know what your rights are. But if you don't know, you just go off what you saw on Instagram, about I know my rights, and what you see on Facebook Live talking about people know their rights, that you will end up in jail, you will end up slammed, and you will be wrong because you don't fully understand your rights. So please make sure you understand your rights. All right. And so let's talk about this thing, the Black Lives Matter movement. in light of all that's been going on, the racial tensions are at an all-time high. I know that, it's been summertime for you all since, some of this real heat, y'all haven't been in school since some of this real heat, has come on. But in light of that, and Black Lives Matter movement was one of the, movements, the second movement in the black community that was not started in the church, and does, even though it has a church presence, it is not church-led, it is not minister-led, it is led by some young radicals who are rebels who ain't playing. We talk about turning the other cheek. They ain't turning no other cheeks, and I understand that, and I appreciate the fact that they take these firm stands, because somebody's got to take the stand. All right, but in light of that, Kayvon, I want to talk to you, and I'll come back to you, Elijah. One, how do you feel about the Black Lives Matter, movement, and what, if in any way, has that movement impacted or affected your life?
With the Black Lives Matter movement, I think it's a good movement. I think it's a movement that needed to happen. Mm-hmm. I think more people, more young men, more young women my age need to pay attention to it, because if you're black in America right now, you're a statistic. And people are making that a bad statistic, but if you stay together and you do positive things, you can change it. And I think by the small things they're doing with the protest, not the looting, but the protest and the just shutting down cities almost, they're proving that that we have control. As a younger generation, we have control over a lot more than what we think outside of Instagram. And even when you look at the Instagram presence, people are taking what younger people are doing on Instagram, and now it's starting to spread to Facebook. Now it's starting to spread to YouTube blogs. Now it's just spreading. So it's really showing the power of younger people.
Yeah, the power of unity. Felicia, why don't you give Stephanie the commercial that they shot, and we'll see if we can upload that. It's like 30 seconds, and let's show it at the end. Let's see if we can show what the students came together and did for Black Lives Matter. All right, so Elisha, as you were shooting, this commercial, what I love about Black Lives Matter is it's not just for Black lives. But there are a lot of your friends, Hispanic, white, and everybody was a part of this video. In light of this, what are you experiencing as a young man when it comes to Black Lives Matter at school or otherwise? Do you feel racial tension, or do you feel unity, or do you feel people are supporting your friends, are supporting the Black Lives Matter, or is it causing like a separation where like some kids are for it and some are against it? What are you experiencing, or what did you experience? Because it's not new, but in terms of the tension that's in our country right now. Your mic.
I've seen both a good and like a bad to it, because the good thing is that it is unity, and I've seen so many people even around the world, people that aren't even in the USA, that are protesting for Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And it's amazing to see how many people, because over the years, after so many have been killed, it's like what he said, once you get tired, you get tired. And I think people are finally just tired of it, and then they just started to protest. And the reason I see it in kind of a bad way is because some people are using this man's death to kind of take a chance to do what they want. Like this looting and everything that's going on, that's not what he died for.
Right.
He died for, like, his death should have made like a purpose for us to like protest and fight for more rights, of course, and like racial equality. But that's no reason you should be going around looting stores at this time, especially.
Right. All right. So Reverend Powell, in light of Black Lives Matter, raising sons, leading men, what is your take on this movement in this day and age? How do you see it impacting and affecting Christian men more specifically? And so how do you see it affecting Christian men? And what role should men have in either in light of that, in pushing, for Black Lives Matter, what role should men in particular, I won't even just say black men, I just say men in particular. Is there a role that white men, that Hispanic men, have in this, or is it just something that should be led by black men?
In my conversations with my Christian brothers, the biggest struggle that I've heard them say is dealing with the rage of it, right? So, you've as a man, we've been talking, we've all dealt with at some point either police brutality or racism or somebody in your face or whatever it may be. And we're at this point now to where everything's bubbling over, and as a Christian, you're like, okay, do I fight or am I the peacemaker? So I think that as a Christian, there is a role for us to be on the front lines and still represent Christ and still push the movement along without the looting, without the violence, without the, straddling the fence, so to speak.
So watch this. So I agree with that. I think that, like Elijah said, the people take advantage of that.
Sure.
Like there are people who are protesting, people who are really, Black Lives Matter, the leadership, they ain't for that looting.
Right.
Like they understand it,
Right.
But that's not what they promote.
Right.
Black Lives Matter is not about looting. It's not about any of the other negativity.
Sure.
In fact, it was birthed out of, the fact that so many Black lives seem to be dying, and there were no convictions. There was no consequence at all. So
Right.
they were saying we're dying as if
Right.
Black lives don't matter.
Right.
Like there's no consequence for kill. And so they said to the police and to the justice system, they're saying hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Sure. Right.
Like stop killing us at this great disproportionate rate
Right.
that of any other race, that for the same crimes. When you see a young white man who's shot and killed 9 black people, including a senator, all right, and they apprehend him safely.
Right.
Well, and they knew he was armed and dangerous. I'm saying, why does a brother have to have a gun, and it can be a ghost gun,
A toy gun, a
I think
BB
it was
gun.
Ahmaud in New York got shot 41 times for his wallet.
And
Like
don't forget about the brother who got shot in Walmart walking around with a BB gun. So
what I'm saying is, even why do we have to keep dying?
Exactly.
Is it so the people want about the rage? If the rage bothers you, no, the rage is because it's a pandemic. It's another pandemic, but it's not a pandemic. It really is, but it's not treated like one until it happens to unarmed white men.
Right.
When unarmed white men and unarmed white women start getting shot, at disproportionate rates by any color officer, but especially if black officers were killing unarmed white women at an alarming rate, there would be PETA, who for pets would be out there marching. Like it wouldn't even matter. So what I'm saying is it was birthed out of that. But I don't want the message of Black Lives Matter and the movement to be in any way, shape, form, or fashion erased by the fact that people are looting and that people are doing those things. Because and here's to my Caucasian friends. Here's what bothers me, because you're saying, it's almost as if to say I would care, I would care and support, this whole thing, but all the rioting and all the looting and stuff, I just can't get with that. And so I'm almost as if to say that washes out the fact that Black Lives Matter, the real movement. And so and it has been proven time and time again that some of the main ones who are looting and are inciting and who are kind of pushing forth the violence have been the police.
Yeah.
I mean, companies have gone to drop bricks and set them by glass buildings. They have done that. That wasn't African American people. That was white people coming to do it. With the hope of if they riot and loot, okay. Because looters are going to loot, but they're saying that'll take the eye or the attention off the real fact of the injustice that's going on with our justice system.
And I think that's why it's so important as men, as Christian men, that we get out in the forefront and channel our rage and our anger in a positive aspect. Now, you mentioned at the second part about should we allow, other colors to be a part of the movement? Well, absolutely.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
I don't believe that they should be out in the forefront. I think that it's up to us to take hold of the reins and play the bigger part of what our future would be. You know what I mean? It's if we're concerned about justice for us, if we're concerned about pushing the cause for us, if we're concerned about doing better and being better, we have to be on the forefront of that. We have to be the men's praying. We have to be the ones bringing about the social change. So that's how I
Understand. So listen, we're going to have to wrap up here just to kind of shut it down here at 8 o'clock. First of all, thank y'all. One of the things that I want to just say to those of you who are watching, we have one question. Men, what do you tell your daughter or son when they start dating and they want to date someone that is Caucasian? Okay, if your son or daughter wanted to date somebody that was Caucasian, how would you feel about that? That's on the spot.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that love is love. I think that you have to do your due diligence, and ask questions. Why are you with this person? Or do you know what all this entails? Are you ready for the ramification of that? And if they're mature enough to say yes and deal with that, I don't have, a problem with my son dating outside of his race or my daughter.
I would deal with them just like I would with anybody else. I always tell my son that fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And so if you're going to date any young lady, whether it be Hispanic, white, or black, when you see their family, look at their family and how they act. Look how they treat you. Now, I would tell them that if it's a white young lady, be careful because everybody in her family may not like you. Even if her parents like you, then she may have some uncles or some cousins that may not feel the same way that they feel, and you may have to take some heat in, being with her, especially if you begin to get serious with her. So if that's something that you're willing to deal with, be prepared.
Yeah, and our kids didn't come up with the same. They were not raised necessarily with the same racial tension. I went to a pretty diverse high school, so it wasn't that uncommon to see you talking to somebody interracially, but it was still parentally. Parents could feel a certain type of way. But this generation right here, they definitely don't have those same boundaries. They definitely don't have those same reservations that you or I might have had. This generation came up, it's not taboo to have homosexual friends. It's not taboo to have, to date, interracially. That's not taboo for them at all. Your sons and daughters both have friends that, that are gay or lesbian or homosexual, and they're just like, that's just how they are. It's not a big deal. Whereas coming up, I think even with our generation, that was still a little like, if you came out as gay or lesbian, homosexual, something along those lines, you might have still experienced just a bit of ostracism, unfairly. But when you're ignorant of these things and you don't know about these things, and we're always cautious, especially about things that we don't understand or we can't explain. And so this is just a different. It's a different time that we live in. All right. Let me ask this next question. It says, I've been having the talk with my son most of his life. At what time in his life should I stop having the talk? Well, if you'll allow me to answer this one, I don't know that you ever stop having the talk. I think there will come a time where he's grown enough. Either he understands that or not, but I think that until that point, until he is out on his own and grown and making his own money and his own decisions, and even then, when I leave my parents, my mom will still say, baby, be careful out there. You be careful going home. Where let somebody know when you make it. I'm 40 something. She still said, let me know when you make it home. So I'm simply saying that I don't know that talk ever stops. I think that it is a forever talk. I think that as a parent, that concern is typically authentic and continues to go and grow.
Well, my mom always says, you grown, but you still my baby.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the mentality as a parent that you have. I might, when Dylan reaches that age, I might not lean on him like I do now, but that's my son. I'm still going, if I feel like I need to say something, I'm going to say it.
Yep. He said, my son is 36, and I still have that talk with him, because you got to. You must have that talk, all right? So let's get it. Elijah here shot a video. He and his friends did this video. Let's test to make sure the sound is going to be right. For this video, I want you to check him out during this Black Lives Matter commercial. All right. Let's play it and go. On your mark, get set, and go. All right. They said they was ready.
The death of George Floyd was senseless, violent, and part of the systemic injustice that so many before him have faced.
There is no greater time than now to use our voice to inspire change, not just for today, but for all the days to come.
We have the opportunity to play a critical role in eradicating hate in every community across this great nation.
If we truly want to put an end to hate, we must stand up against hate. We know that as youth, it is our responsibility to be leaders.
Forcing honest conversations about the divide, the hurt, the pain, and the despair.
We must also listen, learn, and look within.
To address the deeply rooted racism that continues to pervade our society, we must do more than just simply talk.
There's an urgent need to act. Here's how you can make a difference.
Under the First Amendment.
All right. Very good. So listen, you see the superstar. I mean, he used the biggest word, eradicating. We must eradicate it. So I'm exceptionally proud of all of them. Thank you for your questions, those of you online. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Give us a final word. Each of you just listen. In light of where we are with the climate of what we're experiencing, just kind of give us a final word or thought to kind of take us on in. And we'll start right here with you, Reverend Pruitt.
One thing that we have to do, we have to communicate with our kids.
Yes.
Not just talking, but sometimes we also have to listen. We have to listen to our kids.
Yeah.
We have to see where they are so we can better guide them. I was taught that as a kid, it's little, you're more like a referee in life where you tell them what they can't do, what they need to do. But as they get older, you become more of a coach where you have to kind of back up and guide them and see where they're going so you can further guide them as they go on in life, whether it's with dealing with racism, education, or just socially. We have to really be there to make sure that we're guiding them where they need to go, especially with things of Christ.
Yeah.
I think it's also all about communication, not just talking about, the whole, the race, but also about how, like you said, to conduct yourself. Just communicate with them. They'll communicate with you about how to conduct around police and everything, and with police brutality and everything that's going on. And also, if they ever feel like there's a time where they need to, like, let's say there's like a peaceful protest, and they feel like they need to go out there and they need to say something, like make their voices heard, then just let them.
Man, that's good. I agree with all of that, the communication. But, I feel like we're on the edge of something great.
Yeah.
So what I would say is right now is don't get weary. Don't get lackadaisical. Don't give up. Don't let this movement stop. To the younger generation, you are at the helm of this thing.
Yeah.
So keep pushing, keep fighting, operate in wisdom. As they said, communicate, and don't lose sight of the goal. There are a lot of tricks being thrown out, trying to miscommunicate and not let the right hand see what the left hand is doing. But stay focused and push this agenda till we get what we want, till justice is served.
Well, I agree with what everyone said, but I'll go from just a slightly different angle. In this time, as many strong black women as we have, we need strong black men. Because if you have a son and you are not there for your son, you might not have him for very long. Because a lot of these kids and younger people that don't have fathers, they don't have the same direction. They're not looking for the direction, so they are out trying to figure out life, trying to make, if it go good, it go good. If it mess up, try something different. But you don't want your son to try something and it cost him his life. Because in a few situations, even when I was in high school, that was the case. Someone tried something and it cost them their life. So black men really have to step up in this occasion, because if you don't, what you see as your son or what you see as your daughter, you might not wake up to them.
In this day and age, you've heard so much about Black Lives Matter, and of course, the movement that people have tried to talk about, were in recent days, where so many of the officers resigned from emergency services. They threw their badges or their handcuffs, down to quit, suggesting, and their whole theme was, well, blue lives matter too. And some have suggested, well, all lives matter. Well, can I just tell you something? Until black lives matter, all lives don't matter. And as long as we're still secondhand citizens, as long as we're still being treated differently, even for the same crime, receiving much longer sentences, until all of those things, while all of those things still exist, all lives can't matter until the black ones do as well. To every father who's been a great father, thank you for doing what you do. And sometimes being a father is a thankless job, but thank you for doing that, and especially to all of the mothers, especially the single mothers who are raising young black men or even young black women, for doing what you do, for sticking with it, for hanging on in there. Thank you for doing what you do as well. And just know that if you have a young man and you're raising a young man on your own, we have a young men's mentoring program here called Invicta. And so you can direct message our church, and you can get more information about your son becoming a part of Invicta. Of course, right now in this time of social distancing, it's been a bit difficult or challenging mentoring, but we've had to mentor through phones, through text, through other ways, but it is still possible. And I can't wait, because it's everybody's calendar, everybody's thing has been shifted or eradicated. Your vacation plans have had to be changed. Your all of the things that you had planned for this summer and even for the spring have been altered, and now, of course, things even in the fall are being altered. We're all in this together. Hashtag we are alone together. But as the pandemic and as COVID is on the rise again, please do yourself a favor as much as you can. Stay home. Keep your wear a mask. Keep your hands clean, and stay to yourself as much as possible. Listen, until then, I'm praying for you. Please continue to pray for us as we go through, as we navigate these times. I love you. God bless you. Father, we thank you so much for your amazing grace, for your exceptional love. We pray your blessings upon those who have watched tonight, and we ask, God, even now as we prepare to give, that you allow them to be gracious in their giving. In Jesus' name, amen. Listen, you'll see on your screen all the ways that you can give. One of the things I want to remind us is that as we are working, as we are serving, the work of the church must go on. And so because of your generosity, we've been able to sustain and maintain all of what we are, all that we do. We've been able to bless families. We've been able to provide groceries. We've been able to provide diapers. We've been able to provide emergency services for countless families. I can just say, during this time of pandemic, we've helped over 150 families in various ways, and that's because of your generosity. Thank you for giving. Please continue to give. Please continue to be as generous as God has been generous to you. And please know, if you need food, if you are in need, you don't, whatever else you have to be in this time of pandemic, you don't have to be hungry. Let us know, and we'll do all that we can to make sure that you have what you need. All right? Blessings be upon you. God bless you.